James Gunn's Superman trailer has finally arrived, and it looks to be a hopeful, heartwarming film. I'm not usually a fan of trailer breakdowns, but considering my love of Superman, I wanted to talk in depth about what we know of the film. So, the trailer begins with Superman looking very down and defeated. In one of the teasers, we see Superman flying in the north, possibly tailing some other superhero, and that could easily link to the scene where he's crashed in the snow. All we can do is speculate, but I think this is a neat idea. I've always been a fan of the more hopeful, smiling Superman, but showing these moments of struggle for Krypto to pick Superman up are a great showcase of what hope means. Because Superman represents hope, so to see him injured or discriminated by the public, it only makes those triumphant moments more rewarding. And because we see that this is already a world involved with superheroes, it could be very easy for them to try and sabotage Superman or make him look bad, when he's just trying to help others, and any collateral damage or mistakes will be something people like Lex will quickly highlight, just because of how insecure they feel around Superman. With other superheroes, there could be an element of competition that we've not really seen before. Usually, Superman's films are solo affairs, where he is the only savior, so having established some kind of corporate superhero group or unity is a fascinating choice. I can see a lot of interesting potential with Superman as the unfamiliar new kid in the block to the people of Metropolis. And as much as there will be people to support him, there will always be his detractors. With that corporate superhuman idea, I could see Gunn taking inspiration from The Boys. Seeing corrupt superheroes is actually a great idea, because Superman is the hero who ultimately represents good, and will make such characters look lesser around him. Going back to the scene of Superman on the ground, it could be that Lex has infiltrated the fortress. We've seen that kind of thing before where Superman's distracted and Lex finds out a ton about Superman or steals his crystals, and there's a shot with a robot that seems to indicate some tampering. It makes a lot of sense when you really think about it. Superman doesn't have many strong relationships outside of Lois. He's adored as Superman, but that's a different kind of connection. Really, Superman's existence is a pretty lonely one in many ways. He takes a lot of pride in his Kryptonian heritage as a kind of shrine of his home planet, a memory of his lost family. So to see this robot seemingly dying and to have Lex defame or intrude would really affect Superman emotionally. And you have to be creative when Superman can't be physically stopped so easily. Because Superman is so invulnerable, emotional struggles work very well. He's rarely brought down, so moments like Lois's death or the loss of his powers work really well. They've always worked to ensure Superman is delivered human problems that can't be fixed so easily, which we seem to see here. One of the greatest Superman moments is when he reflects on all his great powers and that none of them could save Jonathan from that unfortunate heart attack. Because as powerful as he is, Superman still faces struggle as any human. He's not immune to what life throws at him. For me, Superman 2 excelled because we saw an emotional struggle with Lois and him giving up his powers. With the glimpses we've seen, it seems Gunn will be tackling Superman with that same emotional resonance. It's not something everyone would expect given his humorous works, but I'm confident Gunn can tackle that, because we've seen that side to his work too. I know that Gunn said the Superman will be trying to reconcile how to lead a life between his Kryptonian and human side, so that should be good. Talking about the fortress, I like the classic Donner look it seems to be going for and love the all-star Superman nods with the robot. There's a shot where the fortress seems to be emerging from the ground, and I really like the idea that the fortress just appears when Superman needs it, and retreats when Superman isn't there, something we've not seen before. Because having a huge ice palace would easily get spotted sometime by a helicopter or expedition. It just seems to make sense, and would be a cool visual. It's little things like that, and Krypto, that feel very revitalized, because it's not enough to just play the same beats for Superman. We've seen that done, and it's not been successful. There has to be a kind of fusion of new and old. You want to respect Superman's core, but add neat new influences and villains to keep that universe fresh. Krypto is one of those, an interesting addition that feels very wholesome. I know that James Gunn seems to love animals. Rocket got a lot of heartwarming screen time in Guardians 3, Weasel was misunderstood in Creature Commandos. Basically, Gunn just seems to have a thing for animal stories as well as human ones, but I'm not expecting too much more of an acute dog given how much the film seems to have going on. As Superman's identity is so isolated, it makes sense to have Krypto be a part of that though, and I'm curious whether he just hangs out at the fortress or how much he's involved when Superman's on screen. Apparently, Krypto isn't the perfect dog. Gunn has said he's pretty mischievous, and that's something I can vibe with. I can't think of a more wholesome problem to give Superman, because he has all these powers, but a superpowered dog could cause some issues. I love that the Clark Kent scenes look bumbling like Reeve did, and that has offset some of my issues with Superman looking pretty brooding. We don't actually see him smile once in the trailer, whereas I've always considered that a huge part of the character, presenting that optimism to the public. However, if he is burdened by public outcry or Lex, then I can see why he might feel less chirpy. It's a difficult tone to balance, but it's good to know that Clark Kent will provide lots of levity. Some people find that clumsy aspect of Clark really dated, but I absolutely love it. It really distinguishes the two and allows for lots of lovable moments. Realistically, nobody can relate to Superman, but who can't relate to Clark Kent's clumsy happenings? I think that's a very important aspect to present so that Superman isn't so far out of reach. I like the looks of the Daily Planet we've seen. It looks very warm and inviting with lots of bustle. I like when there are lots of extras or stories going on in the background that makes the Daily Planet lively, and it's such a contrast to his very isolated life as Superman. Traditionally, I vibe with Metropolis civilians wearing fedoras and suits like that of the 40s, but Superman hasn't really felt modern world unless you're counting Snyder's take on the character. However, those films lacked a keen identity. I think Gunn has a good mix of the two. The Daily Planet looks old school enough, but it's clearly a very modern world. Anyway, we get a shot of Lois looking curiously at Clark, and I like that. I'm not a fan when Lois just pushes over Clark and is only interested in Superman, but it gets tricky when she likes both personas but doesn't know his identity, because we see her with Superman in romantic scenes later, so I'm going to assume she starts the film unaware, and by the end knows Superman's identity, and hopefully Superman won't pull any forget-me kisses like in Superman 2, so that we can see Superman and Lois's relationship progress as we get more Superman films, instead of just stagnating. From the glimpses I've seen of Rachel Brosnahan in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, I think she could be one of our strongest Lois performances yet, but we've not seen enough to tell. So I'm very excited to see what the chemistry is like, because that's really the heart of Superman's stories beyond the fights and visual stuff. We saw a little glimpse of Clark with Jonathan, seemingly consoling him, so it's very possible that Martha passes instead of Jonathan. Either way, I hope that we see the Kent family every now and then. It was always weird when we never saw Martha again after Superman 78, or acknowledged her death. And since Superman can be so lonely, keeping his parents involved is always welcome. We get a quick shot of Superman saving a kid from some explosive action, and it looks ripped straight from a comic book. These kind of public scene saving people are so important, and they've kind of been lost in modern films. It really creates a sense of community that we saw highlighted in Reeves' films, and Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. These kind of heroes don't mean anything without public reactions or saves, so I'm so glad to see that there. We also get a shot of a kid in the middle of warfare, hoping for Superman's rescue, so I hope we get little international scenes of Superman. He isn't just restricted to Metropolis, and any time he does engage internationally always feels very collaborative. Superman stands for everyone, the whole world, not just America. To Superman, the world is one picture with no borders. Man of Steel really got things wrong when we never saw Superman save anyone, and it turned into mindless action. That's clearly not the case here, but with public distaste, it seems Gunn is taking a very slight inspiration from Snyder, as much as I dislike his work. I'm open to such things if they're executed well, but hopefully they don't drown out a sense of optimism. Lex Luthor is of course our villain, and though we've seen him plenty, I've never seen this billionaire playboy type Lex before, nor a serious take on the character. Well, maybe apart from Smallville, that Lex was pretty good. I want to feel a real sense of threat, and I think that will be there. Lex seems less jokey than some incarnations and more determined and angry. When you see him in the image with the gun, it just screams independence, a real thirst to take down Superman. I'm curious whether Superman will have affected his life in some way, or whether Lex is just generally jealous and bitter. Being such a rich character, it does seem Lex has it all, and Superman's good deeds might interfere with whatever he has planned. Finally, there's a shot of some kind of laser beam in the sky. Gunn has stated that he's going for some of the more sci-fi stuff, and with superheroes already present, I can see high-tech go awry. Initially, people were speculating some kind of Brainiac link, but it seems too early for him appearing. Lex also seems to have some kind of superhero present, so I wouldn't rule out his involvement. It's very likely Lex will manufacture situations to hurt Superman's reputation and bring him down, which is something we've never seen. Superman's rarely been seen as a character brought down by others, but it looks like Gunn will be tackling the struggle of that spotlight when Superman isn't perfect or fails. I think Gunn is doing the right thing by skipping Superman's origin. It's a smart take, because everyone knows Superman's story. Jumping into the plot without setup is good for pacing, and pre-established heroes will just make everything feel very constructed. James Gunn has lots of projects in place, and it seems like he knows what he's doing with DC characters. This film looks to understand Superman's core, yet blend in newer elements like established heroes and even Krypto to create a film that feels like a new chapter, not simply retreading the past. This kind of shot of James Gunn energy might be exactly what Superman needs to feel relevant to certain audiences and remind them the beauty of the character. Batman has been more malleable with plenty of iterations, but Superman hasn't had that same success, so this film really needs to prove that you can implement a different take on Superman's world, as long as it's still a Superman film that captures his essence. My only real concern is that there's a lot going on in the teaser. Superman is in a world which already features Lex, the engineer, and other superhumans, and the film still has to prioritize Lois and Clark's relationship. The film isn't an origin, which will be a big help, but I'm hoping the film is allowed to breathe a little. However, it's not the biggest concern. Oh, and regarding the music, the teaser take on John Williams' score was a great, angelic, slow build, but I'm not as keen on the more hip electric guitar rendition. I hope we have a slower, less rocky theme for the actual film. It's probably just trailer music. I know Gunn is known for his needle drops, but I think a Superman film should have a certain majesty to it. You can't just place a trendy song in there like with lots of his other work. Superman just isn't that kind of character. Quick shots of Krypto dragging Superman up and saving civilians is exactly the good-natured energy I adore in Superman entries. I might have slight issues with the film when it releases, but I will never dislike the hopeful take on Superman. And that's what James Gunn is doing with this film. It's something we will always need, because there's always something terrible happening in the world, and it's Superman who counters such negativity and strives for a better tomorrow. He doesn't create false hope or anything like that, he leads by example and asks us to try and follow that image. Ultimately, he believes in humanity despite our flaws. And that is the beauty of Superman. If you liked this video, please subscribe and consider joining Patreon. Links are in the description below and a pinned comment. I would like to give a special thank you to Starfleet Sohail, who supports me on Patreon. You can find him at Starfleet Sohail on YouTube and Twitter. But most importantly, thank you for watching. It really means a lot.